Welcome to the Laser Pulse training module on best practices for designing training toward research translation. I'm Dr. Jim Ansaldo of the Center on Education and Lifelong Learning at the Indiana Institute on Disability and Community at Indiana University. This module will help you to design engaging and impactful training as part of your project's research translation activities. As you may know, research translation is a core component of the Laser Pulse mission. We believe that an iterative, collaborative process will ensure that research not only is understandable to a variety of stakeholders, but from the very beginning, research is designed to be responsive to their specific needs. Research delivered to stakeholders must be tailored for a particular audience in the form of what we call translation products, tangible items that help translate your findings into practice or policy. In some cases, these could be policy briefs, infographics, or videos. In the case for this module, we'll be discussing best practices in designing trainings as your research translation product. Training is a critical component in research translation processes, and we hope this module will be helpful for you. This module has two main objectives. One, to provide a rationale for engaging stakeholders in the design of your training activities. And two, to provide examples and activities for further skill development. Our hope is that a variety of individuals, including those in research, government, and NGO settings, will find this module to be a helpful introduction to strengthening their own skills around designing training toward research translation. Does the following scenario apply to your project? You're in a common position with your partner in that you've identified a training as being your primary product for research translation based on your findings. You could be training teachers on a new curriculum, community leaders on a new approach to table banking, or local farmers on a new technology to store crops. No matter the topic of your training, it's important to engage your stakeholders before and during the design of your training. It's also critical to attend to design processes and best practices to make sure your trainees get the most out of your training and that your research leads to high development impact. Engaging key stakeholder groups throughout your research project will help you to learn about their wants and needs. Consult them during research design. Collaborate with them during data collection or in other parts of the project. Keep them informed throughout and consult them when designing training opportunities. For additional information on opportunities for engagement or best practices, Laser Pulse will be deploying materials on stakeholder mapping and engagement on its website soon. With trust from this stakeholder and knowledge about them, you can design a training to respond to their needs. Engagement will help to ensure that you're training the right people on the right topic at the right time and using the right tools. Let's look at how to do that. One method for designing an engaging and impactful training is to deploy a backward design process. This section of the module explores this concept. Backward design refers to the idea of beginning your training design by articulating the learning outcomes of your training. In other words, begin with the end goal in mind. Based on the findings of your research, what is important for key stakeholders to know, understand, and be able to do? What definitions, information, rules, and/or other factual information are essential for stakeholders to know? What broader concepts, theories, and/or themes will help stakeholders to develop a deeper understanding of the training and its importance? Finally, what will stakeholders do with this knowledge and understanding? What skills and practices will enable stakeholders to translate your research-based recommendations into action? We used a backward design process in developing this training module. Once we developed the objectives for the training, we were able to identify key concepts and activities to develop understanding and skill. Without a backward design process, you run the risk of developing a training that's really not targeted or tied to your goals, and you may deviate from what you're really trying to accomplish. You can have great research and great content in your training, but if it's not presented appropriately, you can lose your audience and mitigate your impact. With clarity around your end goals, you are ready to begin designing your training, almost. It also is very helpful to assess stakeholders' current levels of knowledge, understanding, and skill. This information will help your training to be both impactful and efficient. An assessment may be as formal as a test or survey, but valuable information also can be gleaned from informal conversation with stakeholders. Armed with both clarity around your goals as well as information about stakeholders' current knowledge and skill, you are ready to design training activities for maximum impact. This section of the module explores a framework to guide the design of your training activities. As people learn, they ideally progress from a general awareness of new information to a deeper conceptual understanding. They then acquire new skills and finally apply those skills in real-life situations. Let's take a closer look at each of these stages. At each level of progression, learners demonstrate their learning in different ways. When one has developed awareness of new information, they are able to articulate the general concepts related to the topic. For example, if we were to use the analogy of the game of football or soccer, a person with a general awareness would be able to tell you that the sport is played by two teams, that players must advance the ball down the field without using their hands, that points are scored by placing the ball into the opposing team's net, etc. As one's conceptual understanding deepens, they are able to describe the actions required in various situations. Someone with a deep understanding of football, for example, might be able to explain various defensive and offensive strategies. However, that person still may not have developed the skills to be a good football player. As one first acquires new skills, they may be able to use them in limited or simulated situations. Going back to our football analogy, a player acquires and develops skills by participating in practice drills that focus on dribbling and passing the ball, kicking with accuracy, etc. Then comes game time, when a player must apply these skills in a real-life situation, faced by an unpredictable opponent. Hopefully, all their hard work and practice leads to a win. Instructors play a critical role at each level of progress, and certain methods are helpful in achieving particular learning outcomes. Lecture or presentation, such as in a traditional classroom or workshop where an instructor provides an overview to an entire class, is helpful in developing learners' general awareness of new information. To deepen learners' conceptual understanding, an instructor may model a skill or demonstrate a process. Practice and feedback are essential toward helping learners to acquire and develop new skills. Finally, coaching will help learners to apply skills in real-life situations and grow independent in their use of an array of new skills. This chart puts all of the information together. Take a moment to look it over and then consider this scenario. A project team develops a training guide that illustrates the steps involved in a new way to store crops. What level of impact will this method help learners to achieve? Hopefully, you identified the level of understanding. An illustrated training guide is a valuable resource that can help learners to understand a new process, and it even may provide a guide for practice. If you stop there, your learners may not be able to implement the knowledge they've learned. That's fine if your goal is to develop the learner's understanding. For example, you might want a local policymaker to understand the new method of storing crops, but you don't expect them actually to engage in the work of storing the crops. However, if you want your learners actually to develop new skills, both practice and feedback are required. Without feedback, learners may end up practicing the wrong things. Finally, if you want learners to implement the new skill in real-life situations, coaching during application is a helpful strategy. As mentioned, this framework is helpful in designing impactful training activities. It also may inform the design of your stakeholder assessments. Finally, it can guide us in thinking about how to make most efficient use of face-to-face time in training. You've clarified what you want your stakeholders to know, understand, and do. You've assessed their current knowledge and skill. You've designed engaging and impactful training activities. One final consideration is how to maximize the use of face-to-face time. This section of the module offers guidelines for making the most efficient and effective use of your and your stakeholders' time. The framework we explored in the previous section tells us that interactive activities, practice, feedback, and coaching are critical training methods if we want stakeholders to be able to put research-based information into action. The methods identified in the first two rows, lecture or presentation, along with modeling and demonstration, can be used in face-to-face training. However, a more efficient approach is to design materials that allow stakeholders to develop awareness and understanding on their own time and in their own space. Group learning then can focus on training methods that require face-to-face interaction. This approach is sometimes called flipped learning. For example, a trainer might record a video or a presentation with recorded audio that can be posted on your project's website. Learners could access that presentation and watch it on their own time. Face-to-face time then can focus on answering questions and facilitating practice with feedback. Print products also can be effective ways to offer general information, modeling, and demonstration. For example, consider this training manual developed by the Research Technical Assistance Center, a sister project to Laser Pulse. The manual offers important information and step-by-step modeling of a process for improving crop yields and soil quality. Distributing the manual to stakeholders would be an excellent way to help them develop awareness and understanding of this process. In this scenario, face-to-face time then could be spent facilitating stakeholders' practice of the techniques, offering them feedback on their practice, and possibly coaching them as they implement the techniques with their own crops. This type of training would be engaging, impactful, and efficient. Take a moment to think about the training you might design in connection with your project. What information, models, and/or demonstrations might you provide in formats that stakeholders can access individually and on their own time? What skills might be necessary for stakeholders to practice in a face-to-face environment? Where can you provide feedback and coaching? This concludes our online module on designing training toward research translation. We hope that you found the ideas and examples helpful as you think about how to engage your stakeholders in captivating, impactful, and efficient training experiences. Make sure you understand your stakeholder group well enough and identify whether it's most appropriate and effective for them to reach the levels of awareness, understanding, skill acquisition, and/or skill application. Think through your project to design the types of training activities that will be most effective, and assess the best way to maximize your stakeholders' time in the training toward achieving real impact. You also may consider taking some of these principles and applying them to other types of training, such as virtual training or train-the-trainer models. Just remember that each of those have their own additional best practices to consider. Whatever the focus of your research and development work, your training will be enhanced by using a backward design process, designing training activities that achieve the desired level of impact, and maximizing face-to-face time. Please let us know your feedback and give us a 2-minute evaluation at this link. Look out for additional laser pulse modules moving forward.